This week in history, we don't look to the Titanic, but to the ship that saved the Titanic survivors. The RMS Caparthia, small, modest, and built for second-class passengers. It became a hero on April 15, 1912. Pushing past its limit, Captain Arthur Ostron raced through the ice at full speed to rescue more than 700 lives adrift on rafts in the freezing Atlantic. It returned to New York not as a luxury liner but as a ship of salvation. Welcome to Kaleidoscope with me, Savithri Rodrigo, where stories matter. From the Kaleidoscope studios, Dr. Asanka Vijayasinghe, Hashan Kure, and the headlines of the
අපි පුංචි කාලේ කරනවා මලක් අරගෙන ඒක ව්‍යච්ඡේදනය කරනවා section dissect.
Hashan Kure's newest body of work brings on a lesson in biology. It's about dissecting, it's about analyzing, and it's about reconstructing.
මට හිතුණා මේ අපි එකිනෙකා වශයෙන් ගත්තත් සමාජයක් මේ ওই විදියට ගත්තත් මේ දේම තමයි දැන් අපි කරන්නේ. මේ එක එක විදියට අපේ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් මත කෙනෙක්ව තෝරගෙන අපි ඒ කෙනාව ව්‍යච්ඡේදනය කරනවා, dissect කරනවා. dissect කළා නිකන් ඉන්න.
Nothing Casts a Shadow Alone was a brilliant exposition of Hashan Kure's layered mixed media paintings and installations of faces, puzzles, shadows and fragments, and the hidden flower in their midst, bringing that biology lesson into perspective.
ඒක කොටසකින් කතා කරනවා formation එකක් ගැන, තවත් පැත්තක් බලුවොත් ඒක deform වෙලා තියෙනවා.
Displaying 2 years of work, Hashan plays with his faces, making light meet form, urging people to look inwards and outwards, away from the contained space, to a living field.
මේක actual person කෙනෙක් නැහැ මේ වගේ. නමුත් මේ හැම කෙනෙක්ටම පොදු ලක්ෂණ මේක ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා. එතකොට common man කෙනෙක් මේ ඉන්නේ. එතකොට මේ features follow කරගෙන ගියාම මේ features ඇතුලේ සමහර විට මම ඉන්නත් පුළුවන්. follow කරගෙන ගියොත් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ question කරන තැනට ආවහම ඔව් මේ අපි
Kaleidoscope is on every screen, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. Wherever you scroll, we shine. Backed by Selinco Life, CDB and The Daily Morning, we bring you stories that matter.
Cool appetizer. CDB Self. Introducing CDB Self, the digital wallet that makes life easy. CDB Self.
The week that was captured in seconds in CDB News in a blink. The IMF staff level agreement being signed this week will release a combined $700 million before May, while the ADB will release $1.2 billion this year as well. Sri Lanka's private sector credit shows a sharp rebound in February, with borrowings rising 74.7% month on month to 144.3 billion rupees. Sri Lanka's official reserve assets decreased by 3.5% in March to $7,019 million. And now, let's check out our markets this week. Foreign sales continued to keep a cap on the all-share price index at the Colombo Stock Exchange, with local buying helping to keep price levels stable over the last week. Oil prices swung sharply, dropping below $97 per barrel midweek after President Trump announced a conditional 2-week ceasefire with Iran. In March, gold dropped by more than 11.5%, its steepest drop since 2008. But in April, central banks continued to buy gold and pushed it back up again to $4,830 per ounce. NASA's Artemis 2 astronauts set a new record for the furthest distance humans have traveled from Earth. Clowns in Bolivia protest a government decree that limits schools' extracurricular activities.
focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Silico Life.
Sri Lanka's exports to the US are navigating turbulent waters. Apparel tariffs spiked from 16% to 37% in 2025 before easing to 21.6%, while exemptions now grant $65 million in tariff-free access. We are joined by research fellow of the Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka, Dr. Asanka Vijayasinghe, whose recent research dives deep into the shifting currents of global trade and their impact on the economy. Looking at everything that's happening around us, how do sudden changes in US trade policy and US policy per se cascade to affect smaller countries like ours?
One thing is when tariff goes up, the trade cost goes up. That means for importers, now our products are more expensive. So that's the main channel. For example, earlier under the normal tariff system, tariff rate was like 16% in wearing apparel. It went up to 37. It's a huge jump. The other thing is that small economies like Sri Lanka depends on one market. For example, US. 37% of apparel goes there. Trade policy changes in the US has a magnified effect on Sri Lanka. These affect through currency depreciation. There can be macroeconomic effects. So these are the ways we are affected.
So we're seeing container prices go up. We're seeing currency depreciation as well. And from what you mentioned, apparel is significantly just one market. Now, if tariffs on clothing continues to rise like this, given that we've been experiencing this, can we cushion that blow?
In February, United States Supreme Court struck down IEPA tariff. For your audience, this technical term, this is IEPA, International Economic Emergency Powers Act. This is the legal tool Trump administration used to impose tariff. Supreme Court said no, it is illegal. Now our tariff is back to 10% reciprocal tariff on top of MFN, most favored nation tariff. Now if there will be another tariff rise, of course it is bad news. We saw that in 2025, importers absorbed this cost to some extent without passing it to the consumers. But we cannot assume that it can be continued for a long time because it squeezes their profit margin. I don't think there is a way to cushion up this large shock.
How can Sri Lankan exporters actually plan ahead when these rules are so fluid at the best of times?
We saw that the importers are absorbing some cost. It is one way forward without passing it to the consumer. Firms and the US retail suppliers absorb the cost. But again, there is a trade-off. Profit margin goes down. Then the labor force will be affected. Those effects are there. This is the problem. Other thing is exporters can ask the government to get into a better deal, lock in to a low tariff rate. That is another way forward.
Just tell me, how can we guard against everything that's happening right now, because it is affecting global trade and affecting Sri Lanka as well?
We cannot export our current products like ready-made garments to the Asian countries. We need to invent new products or diversify into new products. And also, our traditional markets, EU and US, our competitiveness is challenged. For example, India and Indonesia, they concluded free trade agreements with EU. So there are two approaches. One is trade deals with the Asian countries and diversifying into new products. The second approach is making sure that our competitiveness in EU and US is protected through trade deals.
Looking ahead maybe for the rest of 2026, what are you seeing of trade policy and global trade in general?
Well, this is a bad year for trade, especially with the US-Israel attacks on Iran. World Trade Organization is also expect that global trade growth will be very low compared to earlier predictions, about 3 percentage point lower. Now shipping fees are very high. Insurance is a very complex process now. and US is heading for inflationary cycle, so demand can go down. This is a bit of a bad time. I think resilience is the way forward this year.
For now, we close, but the stories continue. Kaleidoscope returns next week because this is where stories matter.